Hello friends, welcome to Aligned TV. If you don't know me, my name is Jenn. I'm a coach, healer, and creator of the Aligned Life, and I'm so excited to be here with you today. Welcome back to a brand new series, a brand new format. I was really missing YouTube, missing putting out content on YouTube and creating videos for you guys. But honestly, I don't have time to do YouTube and the podcast. However, I've seen so many creators recently that are making videos that they release as podcasts. So I've decided that that is what I'm going to try as well. And I'm very excited to be here with you in the first episode today. So let me know what you think about the new format and let's get into today's topic. Today, I want to talk to you about failing and the joy of failing. Okay, maybe joy is the wrong word. Maybe you're not ever going to feel really joyous about failing, but this is something that I honestly wish I had better tools to deal with when I was younger. Honestly, a lot of the content that I make, I am thinking about the girl I used to be and the kinds of issues I was struggling with. And even though now I'm in my 40s, I'm still on my growth journey. Like, I'm not done learning yet, you guys. I am still learning. I really have come a long way and I'm very proud of that. But this is one of those blind spots that I continue to work on. And I'm sure that if I'm working on it, then you probably are too. So let's start at what made me think about this topic to begin with. A few days ago, I was working on my website and I was trying something new and I did something, like I made a decision, I tried something and immediately crashed the website. And of course, I freaked out. I had to restore it from a backup and it was a really stressful situation. And during this time, it was already stressful because my website's down and I wanted to fix it as soon as possible, but I could feel and see the thoughts that were coming into my head as this was happening. They were things like, oh my God, you're so stupid. Why did you try that? What do you think you're doing? Like, you should just not try. And so a lot of this was the frustration of knowing my website is down and knowing I have a lot of visitors. So obviously I want to get that put back up as fast as possible. So that is a stress onto itself. But part of it was just my fear of failure, the little inner mean girl voice that comes out when I do something, when I make a mistake or have a failure. So I'm telling you this example because in the grander scheme of things, this is not a major problem. I lost a couple of hours of work and I fixed the problem pretty quickly. It was really frustrating in the moment and I felt like I was going to lose it. In fact, I did a TikTok video showing you my tools on how I didn't lose it. So if you're not following me on TikTok, you can go over to TikTok and watch that there. Now that I've done so much self-work, I can really see these patterns of thoughts when they come up and really notice how toxic and damaging they are. The inner mean girl thing, like, that is a whole topic unto itself. We're not going to get into that today, but I really wanted to talk about this idea of failure because that was at the crux of the situation for me. So let's go way back and talk a little bit about my childhood. I came from a family that just didn't talk about emotions very often. In fact, we really bottled them up and hid them away. Anytime that I dealt with failure as a child, I think my parents just would not bring up that conversation. We wouldn't talk about it. I can kind of see where they were coming from with this. Like, I try to look back at my parents with a lot of compassion. So this isn't like a call out video or anything like that. Just walking you through how I got to this situation. I think in their mind, they thought that talking about the failure would be making it worse somehow, but it really was not that great. Like, just ignoring it and pretending it wasn't there was not that great either. For one thing, this became part of my overall emotional education, which was that we just don't talk about feelings, and that if you have bad feelings, that is something that you should keep to yourself and perhaps be ashamed of. So anytime that I was dealing with anything negative, there was definitely a layer of shame there because I was having that feeling in the first place. Second, when you leave a child to deal with their emotions on their own, they are not learning how to process them. When you are a child or when you're an adult, what you really want when you are feeling big emotions is for someone to see you, recognize you. They don't have to solve your problems. They don't have to give you a pep talk, but you want to be recognized for having an emotional experience. You need somebody there to validate your emotions. That is part of how we process them. So because my parents were talking about it, we were just kind of leaving it in the past, sort of, I didn't get that validation. I didn't get that support. In turn, as an adult, big emotions, especially around failure, seem overwhelming. They seem terrifying because I'm trying to go back to that old behavior. Even though I've done all this work on myself, part of me wants to go back there. Like, we're not going to think about it. We're not going to talk about it. And you're just going to learn how to deal with it on your own. And that is terrifying. So not only do we have the thing that's happening, the frustration around failing, about making a mistake, but we also have this frustration because these big feelings seem so scary and overwhelming to us because we were left to deal with them on our own as a child, and we never learned how to process them. Furthermore, the idea of failure is just something that my family never talked to me about. As I was going through this experience this week, I realized just what a deficit I have in this area. So when I had this issue with my website earlier this week, I got really frustrated. I got upset. And once I got those emotions out, I could see it a little bit more clearly. The thoughts that were coming to me at the time were like, it's okay that you tried something and broke it. Like, you're not a tech person. You do not have any formal training in WordPress or web, like, at all. Like, you don't have that background. Everything that I've done, I've learned myself. And because I'm teaching myself, and because a lot of the time I'm just back here trying to make things happen and testing things out, of course, I'm going to make a mistake. Some of this has to do with the toxic perfectionist mindset that many of us women and men grow up with. Like, we are not allowed to make mistakes. Perhaps you came from a family that was very strict and overbearing, and you really feel like you have to be perfect at everything, even though you've never done it before. So that is also part of this equation. But part of it is just because we don't talk about failure, especially in my family, for instance, like the way that we dealt with emotions, like we didn't talk about it. We just pretended it didn't happen. So I definitely didn't get any coaching about how to think about failure. In fact, failure is just a part of life. And if you are an eternal student like me, and if you're always trying new things in your world, you're going to fail some of the time. That is just the way it is. And instead of making a big deal about these failures in our mind, wouldn't it be better if we learned how to give ourselves credit? After I went through the mental freak out, after I had the little moment of feeling like I was going to lose it and getting into that inner mean girl mind state of telling myself I was stupid, etc., I did pull myself out of it. And I did have this revelation, like, this is okay. Yeah, it sucks. I lost a couple hours of work, but a couple hours of work in the grander scheme of things is not that big a deal. This mistake, this failure, is really just evidence that I'm still fearless, that I'm still teaching myself, that I'm still willing to try things, that I'm not going to sit around and wait and put things off because I don't know how to do it. It's just showing me proof that I am in the process of learning and figuring things out. I really wish that I had this kind of mental training around the idea of failure when I was a child, because I can tell you, when I was young, the idea of failing, making a mistake, was utterly terrifying. And again, part of that is because we didn't talk about emotions. If I had any big emotions, I was left to deal with them on my own. But I definitely also didn't have any positive coaching around failure. Like, we just didn't talk about that part of life, even though it is very normal. So I wanted to make this video today because I wanted to open up this conversation. Even though it might be too far of a reach for me to ask you to enjoy your failures, what would it be like to shift the way you think about them? The next time you have a relationship, a romantic relationship, and that relationship ends, instead of taking that personally, like, why didn't this person love me? Why couldn't this work out? Like, I must not be the right person. Whatever story you're telling yourself, like, what if you looked at this as a learning experience instead? What if you looked at something that happens at work? You thought something was going to happen. You made a presentation. It didn't go as well as you thought. You thought you were going to make a sale and you didn't. What if, instead of thinking, I failed, I messed up, I'm so stupid, it's horrible, blah, 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 whatever your inner mean girl is telling you, what if you're looking at this like, oh, wow, look at me. Good for me for trying. I gave it my all. and this is what I learned. Or next time I'm going to do this differently. That's really important when it comes to relationships. Like, this person was so good, except for these things, and now I know what I want for the next one. And now I know how I need to show up and present myself and what boundaries I need to have in the next relationship. Like, you are always learning, you are always growing. And these failures do not mean anything bad about you. The idea of failure being a really horrible thing is just a kind of collective limiting belief we have all been programmed to think of as being really bad. To that end, when you look at social media and you look at the way people are presenting themselves online, people aren't talking about their failures. They aren't usually talking about this stuff. And that just creates this illusion when we look at the world that no one else is dealing with it, and that if we are dealing with it, then it's really our fault. We are really stupid, terrible, whatever. So not only do I want to open up this conversation and give you this idea that failure can be shifted in the way that you think about it, but I also want to just start to put this out into the collective consciousness of the universe at large. What if we stopped looking at other people's failures with that lens? What if we just started talking about it more? The more that we see people doing it and talking about it and sharing it, maybe it will get easier for you to see that your failures or your mistakes are not that terrible. I always love to say this, but it is so true. And I come back to this statement over and over again in my life. We are all imperfectly perfect. There is no perfect human being. Everybody that you put on a pedestal, it is always just an illusion. And everyone is struggling with the exact same things that you are struggling with. So if you have dealt with failure in the past and you have let it humble you, you have looked at your failure as proof that you are somehow inherently flawed, lazy, stupid, whatever, it is really time for you to reassess and to start to give yourself credit. Give yourself credit for trying. Give yourself credit for learning. We would never put somebody in the driver's seat of a car and just expect them to be able to drive perfectly. We all know that that takes hours of practice. Yet when it comes to other things in our life, we're not that forgiving. So let's start to be forgiving. Whether you are playing with the back end of your website, whether you are learning a new skill, going after a new position, just trying to grow yourself in general, learning how to fail with grace is such an important skill. And I really hope that this video has shifted the way that you think about failure. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Again, my name is Jen. I'm a coach and healer. And if you want to work with me, I will direct you over to Healed, my virtual healing workshop, where I have a ton of programs helping you manifest your best life through deep healing work. I'll leave a link for that in the show notes. If you like this video, please do me a favor, send it to a friend. I would appreciate that so much. And I'll see you in the next one.